Welcome, everyone. Believe it or not, it is time for October announcements. Hard to believe it. The year is more than well halfway over. And it's also the gateway to the weekend, as I like to call it. So, as you're tuning in, you're probably getting ready for this weekend, do some model railroad projects on the layout in the workshop or maybe at your club. Hey, before we get started, let's do some round of shout outs. I already see Jay Cure is in the crowd. Texas and Pacific is here. John Robert Fox is here. Michael and Todd and Mega Multi Mo is here. Sid has joined the chat, and Alexander, just a few to name. And I'm so glad to have you here. We're actually live today, and we're going to be talking about the October announcements that we released this morning. Now, everything that I'm going to talk about today, you have until Friday, October 27th to pre-order. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. And keep in mind, too, for the new announcements video, I just go through and show you what we've announced in case you haven't had a chance to go to our website. We go in depth and we talk about the prototype, we talk about the model, we talk about some of the key features of the models. We go in detail on Train Tuesdays. Now, Train Tuesdays, of course, goes live at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays. That's Central Time. Is it always live? No, it's not always live. Sometimes it is a previously recorded. Will we get back to a live presentation for Train Tuesdays? Time will tell. But for now, the new announcements will be live as well as the Athearn Extra. And you can check those out on our YouTube channel. Do us a favor, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video like this one goes into our YouTube channel. Let's do another round of shout outs. We've got Abel, Union Pacific 1943. We've got Texas Train Fan, and Michael, Shannon, Todd, Fred. We've got a whole list of folks that are joining us here this afternoon, about 83 of you so far. So glad that you could join us for the October new announcements. We've got a little bit of everything for you. And N-Scale guys, I kind of gave you a heads up on our social media last night. We do have a brand new freight car in N-Scale. It's never been released before under the Athearn banner, so stay tuned for that. HO guys, we've got lots of stuff from you to choose from, lots of different errors, and a lot of cool stuff. So let's go ahead and let's get started with what we've got this month for October. Now, before going any further, too, stick around after the presentation. I'm going to open the floor up for questions since it's been a little bit since we've had a live. And also, we're going to talk about some of the things that you may have spotted behind me on the layout. We've got some new stuff coming in soon. We're going to talk about those. But let's first talk about what we're offering this month. Now, starting up, these are the Athearn Genesis ICC cabooses. We've offered these in the past. However, this is a new run. Starting off with the second order of the CB&Q cabooses, or more appropriately called by Q crew members, way cars. A lot of railroads had different names for their cabooses. The Boston and Maine would call theirs buggies. Likewise, the CB&Q would call theirs way cars. Now, these way cars are really interesting because by the time these cabooses showed up on the property in September of 1967, it started the pool service. And basically what that meant was in the old days, cabooses were assigned to divisions, and those cabooses would have to get interchanged at those divisions, whereas these new cabooses, well, they would change crews, but they didn't have to change the caboose. So that just made things a lot easier as the railroads were starting to get larger in this time. Now we're offering the 3 from the second order in 3 different road numbers. I've got 2 up on the screen for you to see here. You can see all 3 on our website. They're being offered in 2 versions. So we're offering these with the NCE decoders with lights. You can also get them with sound and lights if you go for the Tsunami 2 decoders. So you have 2 options there, and unlike the earlier versions, the lighting effects on these can be adjusted for intensity. That was one thing that a lot of you guys wrote in and told us that you really wanted to see in future releases, and we're going to go ahead and put that in there for you now for your user pleasure. So there you have it. We're going to have some cabooses here that are good for the late 1960s into the 1970s. Here's that third number from the second order that the CB&Q placed. And then a relatively early adopter of the Cascade Green. This is a December 1970 paint scheme applied to a former CB&Q Way car. Now, of course, Burlington Northern came into being in March of 1970, so relatively soon after that, this caboose was painted up in the then corporate Cascade Green. This is the only road number we're offering in this particular Way car, but if you like Cascade Green, stick around. We do have some more options for you. Now, for you fans that model early BNSF, especially in the 70s, and believe it or not, all the way into the early 1980s, we're offering 3 different road numbers of early Burlington Northern former CB&Q Way cars. Now, you'll look carefully, you'll see that these have new road numbers and they are lettered for Burlington Northern. However, they've kept their original appearance. That was pretty common. Of course, a lot of the equipment didn't get painted right away, right overnight. So a lot of these soldiered on even into the early 1980s into this same paint scheme. And remember, I said if you're a fan of Cascade Green, we have got some Cascade Green for you in the form of the Fort Worth and Dallas Way cars. Now, of course, the FW&D was a subsidiary of the CB&Q, so likewise, they had the same paint scheme. They just had different markings, different F&W markings on their car bodies. And likewise, when Burlington Northern came into being, they kept the FW&D as a subsidiary right up until about 1980 or so when it was fully merged into the Burlington Northern. We're offering 3 different road numbers on these cabooses, so these are perfect for you guys that are modeling the 1970s all the way into the 1980s. So there's our first setup. We've got cabooses, caboose, or way cars, depending on how you want to say it. And we will talk more about those in detail. If you go with the lighting version, the versions with just lights are going to MSRP at $119.99. If you go with the Tsunami 2 with sound, they're $159.99. So there you have it. You have until Friday, October 27th to place your pre-orders on those guys. Coming up next, we're going to do Athearn Genesis HO scale 57-foot FGE mechanical reefers. We're also going to do them in N scale under the Athearn line, but let's start with what we're offering here. First, you're going to see that we've got a more modern Union Pacific. This is good for early 2002 era. We're going to offer this particular car in 3 different road numbers. Likewise, we've got the Great Northern one there. Era is 1974. You might be scratching your head. Why does that say 1974 when Great Northern was gone by 1970? Well, a lot like the cabooses we talked about earlier. Not everything got painted in its new corporate paint scheme right away. And this is one of those that soldiered on into the 1970s, complete with Rocky sitting there in the upper right-hand side of the boxcar. We're offering this one in just 1 number alone. For fans of the 1990s into the 2000s, even the 1980s, we've got a few different variations here for you on Burlington Northern. Now, the second one that you see there, that lighter green one, is part of our Prime for Grime. And Prime for Grime continues to be extremely popular. This one has already had the factory paint faded, and it's the great starting point for you and your weathering. Each one of these is available as a single road number. Now, another thing that I failed to mention is you can get these with or without sound. You can get these with a Tsunami 2 sound card, and they can be adjustable. It is a manual adjustment. A small potentiometer and the bottom of the chassis can be turned so the intensity of the sound can be adjusted. But it really is cool to have these on your layout or your module because they're set up as soon as they get track power. Randomly, the gen set will turn on, and it makes a great scene. So if you've got, say, a cold storage facility on your layout or your module, it's kind of cool to park those and hear those randomly turn on. We're not done, though. We've got more road names, and this is one that just about all of you requested. Data only. These data only cars that you see here, the green, the white, and the yellow, mustard yellow color, they are just data only. And they are Going to be one item number per car. So one green, one white, one yellow. Again, that was highly, highly requested in our product suggestion email. So this next run, and I think this is kind of humorous. Take a close look at the first Fruit Growers Express car. Our eyes will probably fool us in saying, "Oh, okay, solid cold, right?" Take a close look at the top one, solid clawed. I just think that's humorous because it goes to show that even in the prototype world, mistakes happen. And the Athearn researchers found some data on this car. It's not exactly easy to find, but obscure as it is, the Athearn researchers did find it. We wanted to offer this 1980s era car to the fleet because definitely will get you guys in your operating session to give this car a second look. We're also going to be offering the, as it should be intended, the solid cold version. Again, this is a 1980s car. This is going to be available in many different road numbers. You can check those out at athearn.com. We've also got another 1980s solid cold, not solid clawed. There's only one of those. And we've also, going back to 1974, we've got a standard Fruit Growers Express car. So again, these are HO. This is part of the Genesis line, so they're going to have a lot of detail, like the cut levers and the air hoses, and you can get them with or without sound. Now, N scale guys, we're going to be offering the same roads and same eras for you guys as well. So once again, N scale, just because it's small doesn't mean we're not going to include the availability of sound. Now, these sound really well in N scale. I've got a few of them myself. And as small as they are, they actually project their sound really well. In fact, I've turned mine down. Now, granted, if you're running in such a Fremo or some other type of modular setup, depending on the size of the room, you may not hear them. But if you're running them in a small layout in your layout room, you'll definitely hear them. They've actually got some really great sound to them. So like the HO scale guys, you've got the same options, the same roads, the same road numbers, and the same options. And just because you model N scale doesn't mean you don't want data only. So we're offering the data only cars for you N scale guys as well. We're not going to throw the really cool paint schemes just to HO. We're going to give you the option to get into that solid clawed paint scheme on your N scale layouts as well. And there you've got it. We've got 1980s solid cold FGE as well as the 1974 N scale guys. You get to have these with or without sound as well. It's not just an HO thing. These are part of the Athearn line, and they are going to be available for pre-order, like I said, till Friday, October 27th. So there you have it. I'm going to look too, before I go on to the next set of items. I never asked anybody if they had questions about the Genesis ICC cabooses, but we'll open the floor up for that. And also, if you have questions about either the HO or the N scale reefers. John Robert Fox is commenting. He says, "Thanks, Jim. You heard us. The mistake icebox is sweet." Yeah, that was definitely whoever the group of folks that were wrote into our product suggestion email. Thanks for doing that. We all had a laugh on that. It's pretty cool. Yes, they did. I can substantiate that. I used to see them in Galesburg occasionally back in the late 90s. Let's see. I'm going back a little bit to see if there's any questions that somebody may have asked. Great idea. Buy one with sound and leave it in your yard to annoy your yard master. Better yet, buy multiples and have the sound on to annoy everybody in your operation session. F304 says, "Need a lot of the data only ones. Thank you for doing them." Well, you're welcome. That was a direct response from our Athearn product suggestion email. If there is a road that you see that we did not do this run, or if you just have some suggestions for a future project, you can always send us an email. It's athearn-productsuggestions@athearn.com. That goes directly to our product development staff. Now, one thing I do like to tell everybody as a warning, do not expect a response right away. Our guys are busy doing what they normally do, which is product development. but we do read those emails. We do look at suggestions, and many times we collate all of those suggestions and they become a future run. So if we don't respond to you, please don't get offended. It's mainly a collection point. All right. I'm going back a little bit to see if there's any questions on the cabooses. If I missed your question, feel free to shoot it out there again. I will try to catch it. All right. I'm going to look at some new questions that are coming up. A lot of folks are really happy about the refrigerator cars. It's good to hear. Tom, Keen Eye Tom says, great. Now about those Jeeps back there. Tom, stick around. I've got something better than them just being on a layout. I will show you some great pictures soon. All right. Well, let's go on to our next item, which is going to HO and its Genesis, and this one has caused a little bit of a buzz as well. Let's talk Trinities. Let's talk 5161 covered Trinity hoppers. So these remained popular within the Genesis HO scale line. I love these myself. They're so nicely detailed. The printing on them is amazing. The added details such as the cut levers, the output machinery on the bottom, all of that really makes these stand out really well. And so it was time to offer some more. And we thought we'd start with offering the BNSF Railway Heritage cars. Here you can see the SPNF, the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle at the top, as well as the Frisco on the bottom. Now these are being offered just single by themselves. But for you folks that are BNSF fans of 2007 on to later, we're offering 2 3-packs of the more standardized oxide BNSF swoosh paint scheme with a bar paint scheme. And besides BNSF, we're offering some other ones. You know, with Kansas City Southern now kind of a fallen flag, we felt it was time to offer this covered hopper. It's definitely a one that we see a lot here in the Midwest, and one we won't be seeing much longer. So we thought we would offer them as 2 singles as well as 2 3-packs. Now, of course, all the multi-packs that we do offer, there's no worries about duplication of numbers. All the numbers are different. A short line that is real popular in this area here in the Midwest is the Iowa Interstate, and we had a lot of requests for these, so we decided to produce 2 different singles as well as 2 different 3-packs on these. Here's one that I used to see a lot of. I haven't seen it as much lately, but the Incobarosa Industries Ltd, we're offering that as a 1 single car as well as 2 multi-packs of 3. And then the Cargill. And the Cargill one, really popular because this is a modern car. This is 2020. We're going to offer this in 2 different singles as well as 2 multi-packs of 3. These are extremely common around here. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these out on the roads, and for us here in the Midwest, at grain elevators right now. Then we've got more. We've got the Tate and Lyle. Again, this is more of a 1997 era on up paint scheme. And we're offering this in 2 different singles as well as multi-packs of 2 different packs. And the Trinity Industries leasing car, really cool car. Usually you see a sea of blue, or I'm sorry, a sea of green. It's kind of neat to see these blue cars. These are 2010 on up. And we're going to offer these in 2 different singles as well as 2 different 3-packs. And again, you don't have to worry about the duplication of numbers. They're all different. Okay, before I go to the next slide, I'm going to offer a trigger warning for those that do not like legendary liveries, but here they are. We do have legendary liveries in this pack, and we figured, you know what, BNSF has those Heritage Fleet Trinity covered hoppers. Why not do a UP version? These are plausible. They don't really exist, but they are plausible. So we're offering the Chicago Northwestern, the Rio Grande, and the Southern Pacific. These are all available separately, as well as 2 3-packs. Now, each 3-pack will include 1 each of these railroads represented. Again, these are legendary liveries. These would be a scheme that UP might do if they were to do a Heritage Fleet. and they're still cool. They're plausible. Would they really? Do they really exist in real life? No, they don't. But could they? Sure. And so we're offering them for you in the Genesis line. So that's what we've got in the HO scale Trinity covered hoppers. I'm going to open the floor for some questions here. I'm going to look. I think I saw some questions earlier. Let's see. Used to see large cuts of the Incobarasa hoppers when I lived in Champaign. That's where I saw a lot of them. I haven't honestly seen any in a while, but you know what? With us all working from home, I haven't been in Champaign very much. Also, super excited for the Tate Mile. Something that has been badly needed for us that model the CNIC in Central Illinois. Yeah, there was more than one or two modelers I could think of located here in the central United States that would be happy with these. Many times on social media, we get blamed for being a West Coast company, but I remind you that there are folks that work for Athearn that are located on the East Coast, the Midwest, as well as the West Coast. And as such, you tend to see some of the things that we like, as well as what you guys write in on our product suggestion email. All right. Okay, we're going to move on unless I see any other questions on these. Folks, anybody that's got questions on upcoming models when they're due, I know our ETA is totally gone on our website. Stick around for the end of the program. I will try to answer as many of those questions as possible, as well as other Athearn questions. So I'm not going to answer those just yet. We'll talk about those later. All right, what's our next item? I think it's time to talk about locomotives now. And we're going to jump right into the SD38 and SD39 diesels. And we'll talk a lot more in depth about these interesting diesels in an upcoming Train Tuesday. But for now, let's show you what we're offering. So first, we're offering that Norfolk Southern that you see there. It's a 2014 on up paint scheme. And below it, we have the Conrail. The Conrail is a late 1970s paint scheme. Now we're offering two road numbers for both Conrail and Norfolk Southern. These are available two ways. You can order these with Economy sound decoders already installed, or you can get these with the speakers already installed and add the 21 pin to sound decoder of your choice. So we've given you two options there. You don't have to worry about installing the speakers because they will be factory installed already for you. Can't be any simpler than that. Just open up that shell, put in the 21 pin sound decoder of your choice, program, and you are done. Now, of course, Conrail was split up between CSX and Norfolk Southern, so it's only natural that the Norfolk Southern would get some of these SD38s, and here we have an example. Now, one thing I do want to say is the Norfolk Southern locomotives will have front and rear operating ditch lights in the DCC or the economy equipped versions. Conrail, of course, in 1977, there were no ditch lights, at least in the United States, so that one is not going to include that detail. Moving forward, for anybody that really wants to add an SD38 to their fleet, but can't justify it because they don't model Conrail or Norfolk Southern, or any road for that matter that had that particular locomotive, we're offering the GATX leasing unit. Now, of course, this was a former Norfolk Southern locomotive. It is also part of our Prime for Grime. If you see carefully, you can see the patches on there. But let's say you really want one of these locomotives and we didn't run your railroad this time. You can justify one of these lease units because these lease units see service all throughout the United States as well as Canada. Likewise, as the SD38s and the SD39s were slowly coming to the end of their life cycle with the Class 1 railroads, a lot of them went to short lines as well as industrial and even, yes, you guessed it, grain elevators. We're offering the Cargill, which is a early 2000s era paint scheme for you folks that may want to justify putting this to work on one of your HO scale, large scale grain operations. I know out here it's not unusual to see one of these older six axles performing the switching duties between pickups and drop offs of the class ones. So continuing on the SD38s and then going into the SD39, we also wanted to offer the McLeod River Railroad, and we're actually going to do this 1980s paint scheme in 3 different road numbers. This is going to give you an opportunity to really build your fleet if you model the McLeod River Railroad, and we hope you do because we saw some suggestions in our product suggestion email. Southern Pacific fans of the SD39, we're going to offer the 1970s paint scheme, and this is going to be available in 3 different road numbers. And coming up next, we've got the Santa Fe in Kodachrome SD39. We're going to offer this particular paint scheme in 3 different road numbers. This, of course, is a 1986 failed paint scheme, although I kind of sometimes wish that merger happened because I really do like this paint scheme, and a lot of you do as well because we get a lot of requests for it. So here's your chance to pick up another Kodachrome to add to your fleet. And then one that was probably a surprise to a lot of you, the Minneapolis Northfield and Southern. We're going to be offering this 1968 on up paint scheme in 2 different road numbers. So again, these are available without sound. They're DCC ready with the speakers already installed. You just need a 21-pin sound decoder of your choice. Those are going to MSRP at $169.99. If you spring for the economy equipped sound locomotives, they are going to be $239.99. Now please keep in mind that is MSRP. So talk to your dealer about what your price will be on these. Everything that we advertise is MSRP because we want you to go to your dealer. All right, any questions about the SD38s or 39s? Yes, sir. We have had requests for those as well. Not in this run, but maybe in a future run we'll do those. Let's see. Kyle says you can never have too many lease units. That is correct. There you go. Ray's saying he likes the Cargill locomotive, and it will be great for your switching layout. Yeah, exactly. Some of you guys, I've seen actual layouts done just on the grain operations, and it's pretty impressive. Christopher says, I have photos of patched Conrail SD38s with Norfolk Southern numbers if you ever decide to offer that variation. Yeah, absolutely. And if you could, please go ahead and drop us a line on the Athearn product suggestion email. Pictures are worth a ton of time for our researchers. So if you've got pictures of stuff like that, definitely. And there's a very good possibility that we can offer that in the future. Any chances of SD38s and N scale? Well, definitely not in this run. In the future, I don't know. Product development's got a lot of things going on their plate right now, some of which we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes. But nothing in the immediate future on N scale SD38s. No, John, not this time. No undecorateds in this run. All right. Well, let's go on to our next item, which is some new stuff. We're going to start with HO, and then we're going to talk about N scale. These are the Berwick bathtub gondolas. Now, in HO scale, these extended sides that you see, this is all brand new tooling. What ended up happening, and we'll get into it in the next slide, but there's been some refinements, there's been some updates, but with these guys here, the extended sides, that's all new tooling. Anthony, real quick, no, the Conrail will not have working ditch lights. It's based on a paint scheme from 1977, and they did not have ditch lights. Conrail didn't have those until the 90s. So we're offering these 2 roads here as both a single and 2 multi-packs of 3 each. And then moving on, we've got the standard bathtub gondolas. Now we've got a Union Pacific here for 1977, the Salt River Project for 1980, and for you guys in the 90s, we've got the Wisconsin Public Service Corporation. All 3 of these cars are available as a single as well as two multi-packs of three. And like I was saying earlier, these have been upgraded. Now, what does that mean by upgraded? Well, as time goes on, the molds sometimes wear down, and rather than just repair the molds, we wanted to update those molds because these molds go back quite a ways, probably back to the 1980s. 1980s molding would not hold up to the standards of modelers nowadays. So basically, what the product development team at Athearn did is they updated these molds to 21st century standards. And what that basically means is the plastic molded parts of the body are more refined. Things such as rivet detail or paneling is going to be sharper than what it was in the past. Also, there's been some refinements on the grab irons as well. And we'll talk more about that in an upcoming Train Tuesday. But these are really almost a new car. That's how much work has been put into them. We have offered them before, but that was based on older molding. This molding is all new, and these are going to be absolutely gorgeous. Now we've also got some Prime for Grime versions here for you. Here we have Utility Fuels from 1978. We also have David J. Joseph Company for 2015 on up. And what's really cool with this Prime for Grime, the Pacific Rail Leasing Corporation, this is a 1991 era car. So we've got 70s, 90s, and the 2000s here for you. And once again, each one of these cars is going to be available as one single as well as two 3-packs. So this is really going to allow you to build up your fleet. And while a lot of these cars were originally used for coal, they did see life further down the road for everything from scrap to trash to you name it. They weren't just coal in their last years of life. Now, N scale guys, you have not had the opportunity to have these in the past, and now you do. And you're getting the new extended sides at the same time as the HO scale guys. So once again, these two here for you N scale guys, you've got the single per road number as well as the multi-packs, 3 cars in each multi-pack, 2 different multi-packs. And brand new. We figured since the product development team was working on the HO versions, we might as well do the N scale ones at the same time. And that's exactly what happened here. So N scale guys, there you go. We're giving you some love. I know a lot of guys out there on social media are hitting us up all the time. Is this available in N scale? Is this available in N scale? Well, this is available in N scale. And I'm really excited about these cars. Once again, you have some options here. For fans of the 1970s, you have the Union Pacific. For fans of the 1980s, you have the Salt River Project. And then for fans of the 1990s, you've got the Wisconsin Public Service Corporation. Don't think that Prime for Grime is for HO only. We are also offering these for UN scale guys. So same as the HO, same roads, same road numbers. No duplicates though on any of those multi-packs. N scale guys, this is where you shine, especially if you're modeling in Fremo or one of the other modular groups. You can build some very impressive scale length trains very easily in N scale, and these are going to be perfect for that. Now, N scale guys, these are going to have body mounted couplers, which is now becoming more of a standard in the N scale world. And they're also going to have nice fine scale metal wheel sets that will operate on both your standard code 80 as well as code 55. And even though we don't advertise it, I can tell you from personal experience, they will operate fine on code 40 N scale track. All right. Any questions on either the HO or the N scale Berwick bathtub gondolas? I'm going to look around here and see. Ray has got an important question. He wants to know, are the N scale ones made in a smaller factory? I don't know. It's a good question. They may be assembled by smaller workers. I mean, I'm only 5'4", which is why I model N scale. Adam's got a great question. Are you going to offer any scrap metal loads for any of these, as many went into scrap service later in life? I can tell you preliminary, we're not offering that, but that is something we may offer in the future, because you're absolutely right. A lot of these, after they were using coal service, did find extended life and scrap, as well as even just regular trash. Let's see, any other questions? Jake Harris says, I would like to see the extends in 3D. We'll see what we can do about that. Product development is really good about sending me 3D CAD drawings, and I'm sure it's just a matter of time before we can get some renderings in front of you. Let's see if there's any more questions on these here. Looks like one more question just came in. Brian's got a good question. It looks like one of our fans has already answered it, but for those that have missed it, why do they have different colors on the ends? Signifies that they had a rotary coupler. In the early days, coal cars had um, doors that would open on the bottom. That's how they would dump the coal into the processing portion of it. But modern coal plants, one for me that was close by, that was serviced by Pan Am and now CSX, although I do believe it's closed now, was the Bow Power Plant. And they had a rotary dump system. So these cars would be placed into the rotary dumper. The sides would clamp onto them, and without disconnecting from the train, they would completely dump this out, much like a child would take a dump truck in a sandbox and just dump it out. This would rotate it, and would dump it, and then rotate it back. The train would move forward or back depending on its orientation, and the next car would be set up, and likewise it would be done again. So this obviously sped up not only the unloading process, but it also made the design to allow a little bit more material than what the previous cars had. All right. Well, let's go on to some more HO. And let's talk boxcars. Let's talk Pullman Standard 5277 boxcars. You always need boxcars. And so we've got a few that we're going to be offering here for you this month. Starting out with the earlier BNSF. This is the Circle Cross logo that they had from 1995 until about 2005. So about 10 years that logo was around. However, these are based on cars in the early 2000s, the standard oxide colors that you see here. And we're going to offer that in 3 different road numbers. Likewise, the next one, it looks like Railbox, but it's not. It's one of our Prime for Grime Railbox cars. It's actually lettered for the Santa Fe as it appeared in the 1980s. Again, that's a Prime for Grime, and we're going to offer 3 different versions of this with 3 different road numbers. And then going into the 1970s, if you're a Burlington Northern fan this month, you're probably going to be really happy because we've got this 1970s era Burlington Northern complete in its Cascade Green glory. 3 different road numbers for this car here. I heard a lot of good things this morning from our fans that are Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac modelers. They said, thank you very much. Well, if you send an email, the thanks is all for you. We're offering this particular boxcar, which is a 1980s boxcar in 3 different road numbers. And we still get a lot of requests for our railroad brothers south of the border. We've got the NDM here. We had a lot of requests for this car. This is a 1970s era paint scheme, and we're going to offer this in 3 different road numbers. And then finally, one from my neck of the woods, the Maine Central. Maine Central had these Harvest Gold and Pine Green cars roaming the system in the 1970s. We're going to offer these in 3 different road numbers. And we'll talk about the details, maybe a little bit of history on these cars in an upcoming Train Tuesday. All right. A lot of guys were surprised to see the RF&P as well as the Maine Central, but yes. Not in this run, but don't worry, we heard you. A lot of guys are asking for data only, so it's probably within the next run we'll probably do a data only set. Nick says he's definitely going to order the Maine Central. Yeah, I'm gonna order those as well. Railbox and Burlington Northern, yeah, they are always popular, hence why we offer them. And yeah, there's something about that Cascade Green. I really like that. Yeah, and keep in mind the Railbox car is Prime for Grime. So The faded paint has already been started. All you need to do is add some dull coat and do the weathering to your heart's content. Joseph's happy that we're offering the 1970s Burlington Northern Green. Yeah, that's true. There is a lot of representation for Burlington Northern in the 80s and 90s. The 70s is an interesting time, and if you're a modeler of the Burlington Northern in the 1970s, you've got some great um, options this month as far as models. All right, let's go on to our next item, and it's our last item for this month. And let's go to the Huskies. 48-foot Husky stack well cars, standalone well cars. We're going to be offering each one that you see here. These are all 1990s era cars. We've got the trailer train, the Burlington Northern, and of course the Co-Rail Leasing. These are all 1990s. Each one of these cars is available in 3 different road numbers. But we're not done there. We've got 2 more roads and one that may have surprised you. We've got the CSX Intermodal. I remember seeing these quite a bit in the 90s. And then the one that maybe surprised you, the Arizona and California. This is a cool car. We're going to be offering both of these cars in 3 different road numbers, so you can definitely build a pretty cool intermodal set with these. If you're modeling the 1990s, you owe it to yourself to grab any number of these cars. And there you have it. So everything that I've talked about here today is available for pre-order. You have until Friday, October 27th to place your pre-orders. And at this time, I want to open up the floor a little bit. If you've got some questions on anything that we've talked about so far, or just Athearn questions in general, go ahead and put them in the comments section there. I will be watching and trying to answer as many questions as possible. So let's see what we've got in here already. A lot of people in the same boat as me. Harold is saying, I got to play the lottery. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming out. Brian's a fan of the Prime for Grime, the faded paint. That's a nice touch because there's a couple of ways you can do that, of course, especially if you have an airbrush, using a white or a gray, um, very, very watered down and thinned down and multiple layers placed on a new freight car or locomotive. That'll definitely get that effect. In the past, I've custom painted stuff and just lightened up the primary color by adding gray or white. But it's certainly nice to have a car that's already primed for grime, and all you need to do is add the dull coat and then the weathering mediums of your choice. We've got some folks asking about the delivery window on the N scale acid tank cars. I'm going to verify that here in a second by looking at a list. Now, right now, while I'm looking for that, one of the things that you've probably noticed about our website is the ETAs are gone. The shipping schedule is gone. Now, what has happened is we had a software integration, and unfortunately, like some software integrations go, well, we lost some data. Now we do have a list that we've been working with our factories so that we know when these items are going to be coming in. Now keep in mind, some of this is so far out there that this ETA that I'm about to give you is just a rough estimate, but it will at least give you an idea when we hope to see these. So let me see, we're looking for acid tank cars. Looks like we might see those probably anywhere between late first quarter to early second quarter. So maybe in the spring of next year, we should be seeing those. I know I've got some. I'm getting impatient for them myself. Let's see, any other questions? Christopher, and there was a couple of folks asking about these ETA on the CSX AC 4400s. Are they going to be coming in soon? Relatively soon. We're on track for seeing those come in the first quarter. So that when I say quarters, first quarter is January to March. We should be seeing those early into the first quarter. That is our goal. I can't promise you that, but that is our definite goal on those. A lot of folks, myself included, have been waiting for those. Andrew wants to know about ETA on HO scale Genesis GP9s. Well, some of them are behind me, so that means they're real close. We'll talk about those in a minute, and hopefully those are the GP9s you're talking about. Here's one that we see a lot of requests for, and I don't blame you. This is one that we're all anticipating. What is the ETA on the Genesis California passenger cars? Now, this is one of those ones where honestly, yeah, we've told you it would be out a certain date, and we've had to extend that date. It's certainly something that we don't want to do, but we also want to make sure that what we deliver, especially on a brand new model like this, is up to everybody's specs. So we're really watching these cars very closely to make sure that they pass all the QC tests, as well as the very demanding tests of not only the Athearn crew, but you as the customer. We're really trying to get those out the first quarter of next year, but it's going to be late first quarter. It may even be spring of 2024. But keep an eye on our social media. That's where we're going to start putting some stuff out there that it's on its way. You'll start seeing photographs of the actual model. Let's see. Sid is asking about the Ohio Central units. I believe, yes, those are in production, which means we'll probably see those in the next couple of months. Stephen Hamilton, on a slightly different note, have you recuperated from your busy summer? Happy to be back to a real live. You're doing great. I appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you for your kind words. You know what? I love being out on the road, especially when I get to meet you guys in person. This past summer, I got to go to a bunch of different shows. Starting at the beginning of the year at the Amherst show, seeing a lot of my friends from the East Coast, going out to the Rocky Mountain Train Show in the spring and meeting up with some fabulous modelers. And then this past summer, getting on the road to Kansas City as well as Nebraska. And I got to say, a lot of you guys are extremely talented modelers. I love to see what you guys are working on. It's just so much more fun to actually interact with you in person. That being said, yeah, I'm kind of tired. I'm kind of glad to be in my own bed and back to my own layouts. But thank you for that, and thank you for your support. We do appreciate it. Jake here says, can you say what is on the water, Jim? What is that is being allowed? Sure, I can tell you a couple of things that are on the water. And what he means by that is that they have left our factory, they've passed all the QC tests, and they are on their way to the States. So what's on the water right now? We've got a couple of different freight cars, but we're going to be talking GP9s here in a moment. Those are on the water. In fact, we should be seeing those in October. So we'll segue into that after a few more questions. Here's a question I see a lot on social media with CSX and their heritage paint scheme. Love it or hate it, everybody's asking, are you going to do any CSX heritage units? I can tell you right now in the immediate future, there's nothing in the works, but keep in mind we are working on 2024 projects as we speak, and you never know what we're going to come out with. Let's see what other questions we have. Christopher's got a good question. He says, to add on to the RJ Corman, any chance you'll ever do an RJ Corman boxcar? Well, as long as we get the tooling for the particular cars that they use, I'm sure we could. The biggest thing, though, is if you want to see something like that produced, please do us a favor, go to send us an email, and that is at Athearn-productsuggestions@athearn.com. Shoot us that email. If we get enough requests for certain roads or certain items, we will produce them. Yes, a lot of requests for these. We're going to be seeing these later this fall. They are totally on track for later this fall. A lot of folks like yourself are looking forward to these. A little bit later than what we wanted, but we should be seeing them late fall. Conrail SD80 Max due soon. We should be seeing those, I would think, before the end of the year. Let's see what else. You're correct. Yahoo, the GP9s are on the water. Big Sky Blue, they will be when I am done with them. Yeah, if you look carefully, Michael, you'll see I've got the Big Sky Blue. Personally, one of my favorite paint schemes. Didn't last as long as it should have, in my opinion. Maybe on Train Tuesday, I'll tell you a little bit about the Big Sky Blue paint scheme and how it was almost a Burlington Northern paint scheme. Here's a great question by Jonathan. Jonathan wants to know, have you tried to get the licensing for fallen flag automobile companies like North American Motors or say AMC or Studebaker or things of that nature? Similar to fallen flags on railroads, as far as licensing is concerned, a couple of things that we have to realize. Where did AMC go? Well, in 1986, of course, Chrysler Corporation, under the guidance of Lee Iacocca, purchased AMC. Ironically, they purchased AMC mainly for the Jeep brand, but Eagle brand did last a few years into the 90s after the takeover of Chrysler. So likewise, if we were to do an AMC product, we would likely have to require some licensing on Stellantis Chrysler at this point. Likewise, Studebaker and some of those other brands, AM General, which became part of a separate entity of Chrysler. There's some research that has to be put in there. Some automobile companies that are less known, like LaSalle, we would have to see who has the licensing on those. Likewise, if we were to do, say, an Oldsmobile or a Pontiac, would still fall under the licensing agreement of General Motors. But that's an excellent question, and it's something that we will probably pursue, because just because in real life Pontiac or LaSalle doesn't exist anymore, they may exist on your layout. Zombie Slayer, just in time for Halloween. Hello, any NF210s anytime soon? Nothing, nothing in the immediate future. Michael, you're probably asking about the Great Northern. Are the plates easy to take off? They do require a little bit of skill to take off because they are on some really fine stanchions, but they can be taken off. Just a lot of care is going to be um, taken when you take those off. You're kind of alluding to that paint scheme again, because people ask, why did they have a plate instead of having Great Northern painted on the long hood of the locomotive? Well, like I said, at one time, Burlington Northern was going to have that as their corporate paint scheme. With those plates on there, they could just take off the plates and put on the Burlington Northern logo, and they were ready to go. Of course, they went a different direction because the other railroads that were not the Great Northern took exception to having that paint scheme. And of course, they came to the decision of using Cascade Green. Let's see, any questions? Joe's asking, how about transit buses? Specifically, if there is a era that you're looking for, more modern, or maybe some of the stuff from the 70s and 80s, that's a possibility. Again, even with those, we have to work with licensing. Any updates on the N-Scale Challengers? I don't have any updates for you yet, but keep track of us on social media. We will try to keep you guys as informed as possible. Now, that little software integration that we had, yeah, it did some things to the Athearn website, and but don't worry, that's all going to get fixed. We do have development and web teams working on the website. They're telling us that we should be somewhat back to where we were before the integration in November. But until then, we're going to try to keep you guys posted on social media of when things are due to arrive and try to keep you in the loop as best as possible. Ted's got a question. He's asking, any small steam in the future like Harriman UP SB 280s or Baldwin 90 ton 282 like Eureka 19, McLeod 18, CCC 15, and many other well known locomotives that still survive? Well, I can tell you honestly, right now, the product development crew has got a lot on their plate, and that is not one of those projects. But that being said, we are seeing folks ask for more small steam, specifically in HO scale. So it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibilities that in a year or so we might start looking into that. Christopher wants to know, when are the Kodachrome SD40T-2s due? Memory serves me correctly, we're looking at the very end of this year to beginning of next year. So probably realistically first quarter of next year we should see those. This is one that we've gotten some questions for as well. When are the BN GP50s coming? We announced those a couple of Marches ago, and we're hoping to have those in by spring of 2024. Here's a great question by Harold. What about Maersk? Interesting thing about them. It was at the Rocky Mountain Train Show a couple of years ago. Another manufacturer was talking with us, and they had gotten a cease and desist order from the corporation to no longer produce that. We, of course, were also approached, and despite our best efforts in the legal department to work with them, they had made the decision that they did not want models of their property made anymore. So, unfortunately, we won't be producing Maersk branded merchandise at all in the future. So, if you've got some Maersk containers or locomotives, they're probably going to be worth something. Already, I've seen on some of those internet auction sites the prices of these items skyrocketing. Another question we get a lot on social media: will you do any locos with the CP KC, the merger with CP and Kansas City Southern? Yeah, it's just a matter of time. A lot of us are rail fans. Myself, Janik is probably one of the biggest rail fans of the group. John sees a lot in the Pacific Northwest. We've got rail fans within the company, and it's just a matter of time before we find something that's going to fit with what we have. And I'm sure probably within a year or so, you'll see us announce one. Another excellent question, and yes, I hope so. Will you guys do surveys again on paint schemes for freight cars? Yeah, that's something that I'd like to do, probably going more into the new year once we get a lot of the software integration picked up and cleaned up, as well as some of the things you'll be seeing at shows next year. Excellent question, Sid. How about Colgate Palmolive licensed products? I see they're covered hoppers daily. I'm not sure how the licensing on something like that works, but it's something that we may have to look into because, like you said, you see them a lot. If it's something that you want added, we might have to look into that. Train Jack says, any more engines with Santa Fe War Bonnet? Well, if you're talking the passenger paint scheme, yeah, absolutely. Or the Superfleet paint scheme, yeah, those are always popular. We try to do those at least a couple of times a month. If you're talking about the freight bonnet or the yellow and blue paint scheme, those are pretty much all the time throughout Athearn announcements. Santa Fe still remains to be one of the more popular railroads to model out there, so that's why we have so much of it. Approach Diverging 013 says, I just wanted to say that I've been a fan of Athearn products since the late 1980s. My Athearn models are the mainstay of my Union Pacific, Southern Pacific, and BNSF fleets. Thank you very much for sharing that. That means a lot to us. We're modelers too, and we take pride in our products, and we like to see that. So thank you for that comment. We really appreciate that. I'm glad that you've been on board with us since the 1980s. Mainline Model Railroad Product says, how about a 34-foot two-bay hopper in the Peabody Short Line? Well, I don't know. We could probably possibly do that. Send us an email at our product suggestion email. That's Athearn at productsuggestions@athearn.com. And who knows, we might come out with the next release. Let's see, a couple of more questions on the steam. Our small steam, we're looking at late fall, early winter of this year, we should start seeing that. Joe, great suggestion. What about a former Santa Fe SD40-2 patch for BNSF with a nose light and ditch lights? It's a possibility. As you know, we updated the tooling on the Santa Fe SD40-2s under the Athearn line this past month. You still have time to pre-order those, by the way. So yeah, now that we've got that tooling done, that's a possibility. We might do that. I guess, Joe, are you looking for the earlier Heritage, which would be the green and orange, or the later um, Heritage Premium orange and black paint scheme? Or we could even do a prime for grime. Raker, I'm guessing you are an N-scale fan, and that is cool with me. Any chance of a BN Waycar in N-scale? Not at this time, but if you've been keeping keeping track of Athearn, remember we announced at some point we're going to be doing a full-blown announcement on the CA11 cabooses. Now, of course, these were Union Pacific prototype. They did go on to other roads as well, but we did an announcement for the National Train Show. And they're going to be Genesis models, but we're not doing them just in HO. We are also doing them in N scale. So that being said, it's a possibility that we may do ICC way cars in N scale in the future. Let's see. Somebody knows I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm not a fan of the Enterprise F. Sorry, I'm more of a standard 1701 or maybe 1701A guy myself. Another question we get a lot of feedback on. What about a new engine on the Dash 8 line? We've talked about it. It's not quite as simple as just backdating a Dash 9. There's a lot to it, a lot of the devil in the details, if you will. And right now, it's not a priority. So there are some other things that we're working on. We wanted to get the AC 4400s done first and get all of that done and put out there before we do any more um, projects like it. Likewise, too, we don't want to concentrate on, dare I say, modern, but for a lot of us, AC 4400 still kind of fall in the realm of modern. There's some other 6-axle and 4-axle locomotives that we'd like to do that haven't been done, especially in the Genesis line, and those are currently in the works, and hopefully we'll be sharing those with you here soon. Dennis, this is a good segue. When is the Big Sky Blue GP9s coming in? Well, I'm glad you asked because we're going to be talking about those. If you look behind me in my small layout that I have here in the office, I've got a few of the GP9s. I've got the Great Northern in the Big Sky Blue. I've got the Kodachrome, and I've also got the Milwaukee Road. And yeah, they look great on the layout, but let's go ahead and blow these up a little bit so you guys can see them. We'll start with the Southern Pacific GP9s. These things are absolutely gorgeous. Now, we announced these in June, I believe, of 2022. And of course, we've got 3 different road numbers for the SP in the Kodachrome. Still one of my favorite paint schemes. And yes, all of the lighting effects, if you pre-ordered the one with the Tsunami 2 decoder, yes, all those lighting features do work. Now, for anybody out there that's under 30 and wondering, why do they call this Kodachrome? Well, back in the day, before digital photography, a lot of us, myself included, had a film camera, and the film of choice, or the slide of choice, back in the 80s and 90s was Kodachrome. The Kodachrome package was a red and yellow, and when the merger that never happened was unveiled, the paint scheme, which I thought was really well done, that was intended to be used in the post-merger paint scheme, quickly was called the Kodachrome. just because it kind of looks like a Kodachrome 35 millimeter box um, that was used at the time. Unfortunately, the merger never happened, and Kodachrome has gone the way of dinosaurs. It's no longer around. But in this run, we're going to do more than just the Kodachrome. Here's the Milwaukee Road. We're doing 3 different versions of the Milwaukee Road, and of course, there's subtle differences between the 3 because they are Genesis. But take a look at the top, right by the dynamic brake, you'll see the number plate. That was something specific for Milwaukee Road, and guess what? That's all new tooling. So if you're a Milwaukee Road fan, you're going to want to, if you didn't pre-order these, you're going to want to get in touch with your dealer now because these are on the water. That means they're going to be here soon. These are probably going to be here sometime in the middle of October. The ones that you see behind me on my layout, those are production models. Those aren't pre-production, they're actual production models. We get those early so we can get pictures of them to put on our website as well as social media. Here is the Big Sky Blue Great Northern. Of course, long hood forward. That's how they ordered them from EMD. Some great features here. Great details. Again, personally, really wish this paint scheme had lasted longer. It was going to originally, but it did not. We're offering these factory fresh locomotives, 3 different road numbers for this one. What's particularly of interest of these is not only do they run long nose forward, but the horn is actually attached to the winterization hatch. Kind of a neat detail you don't see on other Jeep 9s. Now, the ones I don't have in my layout that we're also going to have here in the next few weeks, the Seaboard Coastline. There's 3 different variations on this scheme. We offered 3 different road numbers. I really like the citrus paint scheme. It's a really cool paint scheme. And one that surprised a lot of you guys, the Northern Alberta Railway. Really cool locomotive, really cool paint scheme. I believe we did 2 road numbers for this. Brian's got a good question going back to the long hood forward. Wouldn't running long hood forward make it tough to see? It's funny you say that. Technically, a locomotive doesn't necessarily have a front. They put F on the frame to designate where the control stand is or where the controls are on a locomotive. Some railroads, like the Southern, had dual control, so they could have control stations on the short nose or the long nose. But most of the time, EMD and Elko and railroad companies like that could produce a locomotive to run long hood forward. Now, why did they do that? There's a couple of different reasons for that. In the early days, a lot of the old heads that worked for the railroad were used to a steam locomotive and having that long nose. They felt that having a long nose would help them better in any type of grade crossing accidents that may happen, so it gave them extra protection. And just depending on how the locomotive was set up. Some passenger locomotives, such as New York Central, would set up their locomotives long hood forward. Likewise, Boston and Maine had their Elko units run long hood forward, whereas Delaware and Hudson had them short hood forward. By the time the 1960s and 70s rolled around, though, however, running short hood forward was pretty much the standard. However, Norfolk Southern still was doing this into the 1990s with a lot of their former Southern units. It was kind of neat to come out here in the 90s and see a lot of the high hood GP38s still running long hood forward. So it really depended on the railroad. It was more common in the earlier days of diesel, but it did stick around for a little bit. And then finally in this run, we've got the Chesapeake and Ohio, a simple but elegant paint scheme. We're going to offer 3 different numbers with this. Now, again, these are going to be in the dealer stores probably about mid to late October. So if you pre-ordered these, you're probably going to hear from your dealer real soon. If you did not pre-order these and you think, man, you know what, I goofed, I should have pre-ordered these, you still got time to talk to your dealer, and there's a chance that you could get one of these. Unfortunately, I can think of at least 3 that I'm going to have to add to my fleet, even though I don't model those roads. But these are just beautiful models. These are part of the Genesis line, so even though there's going to be three different uh, locomotives, say in the Milwaukee line, each one is based on their actual prototype number. So there's going to be differences even within the railroads. Ted, absolutely correct. There's yet another reason the FSO, the conductor, knows to tell the engineer to go forward or backward because not all early locomotives are set up the same. Absolutely correct. Sorry about that. I thought I turned the air conditioning off. CN and Norfolk Southern still run their engines long hood forward every now and then on the mainline trains. That is true. I haven't seen Norfolk Southern doing it in a while, but I usually rail fan the BNSF. Michael wants to know when the SD70 ACUs when they will be releasing. Well, if you're talking about the next announcement, we still got a few more months before the year is over. They will happen this year, as far as I know. When the deliveries of the ones that we announced about a year or so ago, we're looking at probably mid to late spring of 2024, if memory serves correctly. Andrew wants to know SD70 ACE T4 and UP. Going to require some tooling on our end, so nothing right away, but it is on our radar. Going back a little bit to see if there's any other questions I may have missed. Joseph, if you're talking about the GP9s that we're talking about in this run, no, they're all going to be, all three of them are Kodachrome. We did the Scarlet and Gray a few years ago, so we wanted to do the Kodachromes this time. Going back just to see if there were any. Derek Adams says we need some Paducah GP10 models. I couldn't agree more. So send us an email through the Athearn product suggestion email. Definitely do that. Matthew says the GP9s look great. Thank you. Janik and his crew put a lot of time of research into these, and I'm really happy to see how they look. Let's see what we got for new questions. I'll stick around for a little bit longer for any other questions you may have, and then I'm going to release you guys to the weekend, which is probably happening for some of you guys on the East Coast, and get some modeling done for the weekend. Andrew says, thanks. Looks awesome. I couldn't agree more. Again, short-lived paint scheme. And I don't think they're going to stay. If there's any that are on hobby shop shelves, they probably won't last long. Michael is saying, Illinois Central SD40A units. Yeah, we've talked about it. There's some tooling that has to be done, but we have talked about it. We're about due to give some Illinois Central fans some love, too. Tom, where'd you go, Tom? Tom says, show the Milwaukee Jeep over your shoulder. I'll do you one better, and we'll show you the one. It's actually the one that is over my shoulder. I've got a picture of it so you can see it. There we go. Beautiful locomotive. Again, those number boards that you see right in front of the dynamic brake blister, that's all new tooling. We've never done that before. Brand new tooling. Ted says, any thoughts on producing crossing gates and lights? Not really. Athearn is pretty much committed to working on freight and passenger cars. locomotives. We have done a few accessories. You know, in the past we did billboards. We probably won't do that again. We also do some vehicles and trailers and containers and things of that nature, but we're going to pretty much stick to what we have been doing for the last 76 years, and that's producing locomotives and cars. We did kind of an accessory with the Caboose snack shacks that we introduced back in May, but that's about the extent of it. Yes, Tom, they are. They're metal etched and they're beautiful. I can bring it to the screen. I don't know if I can do it justice, but let me try. Let's see. How's that look? I don't know if that shows up too well on my camera, but that is metal etched. A lot of nice detail. Just a beautiful model. And again, the Milwaukee Road, we got 3 different road numbers, and each one is different. Each one has got subtle details. You can see how nice that metal etch looks. Hope that helps, Tom. I'll put this back up so you guys can see that. How are the Boston and Maine wood chip cars looking on pre-orders, and what is the ETA? Well, the pre-orders on those Boston and Maine wood chip cars, as well as the other wood chip cars, that is open until next Friday. So you get a little bit of extra time on that one. They're looking pretty good. Now, as far as ETA of when they will get produced, we're looking at about standard is about 18 months right now. So we're probably looking at February 2025 is when those should be available. Of course, keep in mind that's so far out, ETAs can change. Richard, good question. Why won't we do HON3 narrow gauge locomotives and equipment? Well, currently the reason why we have done it is because we don't have all the tooling for it. In order for us to invest in the tooling for it, we have to see a demand, and we know there's a demand out there for it. Is it a demand that's going to allow us to justify taking product development and putting them into that category? Right now, we're not really seeing that big of a demand of it, but we're watching it closely like anything. And who knows? And it's a possibility in 4 or 5 years we might explore doing some of that. But right now, just don't have the resources or the molding to do that. Anthony wants to know, will we ever see roundhouse 30-foot outside braced wooden cabooses again? It's been a while since I've last seen them. Yeah, we ran some 3 or 4 years ago, and I think they came into stock about 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. Will we run them again? Yeah, we'll run them again. They seem to sell really well. People like them. When will we run them again? Probably won't see those again announced until maybe 2024, but we're still working on 2024 planning. Any updates on the Surfliner and California cars? Yeah, I apologize. I know it's been a long time. We announced those originally in July of 2021. There's been a lot of work that have gone into them. The chip shortage, of course, did not help us whatsoever. We've worked around it. We've been working on the goal, and our goal really is the first quarter of 2024 into the spring of 2024. It's still a little bit flexible on the ETA. We're trying to narrow in on that date, but we just want to make sure that everything, absolutely everything, is good to go on those cars before they go into production. And keep in mind, one of the things that we do, anytime a new model is announced, there's a lot of work that goes back and forth between our factory and our product developer that's assigned to that job. And they basically, it's almost like a teacher checking homework. They have to look at that model and say, well, did they use the right shade of paint? Did they use the right detail part on this particular model? There's a lot of checks and balances that go on before anything is put into production. And with these cars, since it's our most ambitious passenger car to date, we want to make sure that we've crossed every T and dotted every I before we get those put into production because the last thing we want to do is disappoint you, our customers. Sid wants to know, is the electronics shortage still going on? Technically, no, but in a way, yes, it is. So think about this for a second. In the electronics market, think about everything that we have in our lives that have microprocessors and chips. Everything from some people's refrigerators all the way to the cars that we drive. And so when the whole industry was impacted by the chip shortage, companies like the Ford Motor Company and General Motors, and I could go on, were affected by this. And as those chips slowly came back into production, slowly became available again, there was a waiting list. Now, Athearn, in the grand scheme of things, we would like to think we're a big company, but in the grand scheme of things, we're kind of smaller than those other companies that we mentioned earlier. They would get those chips first. And it's just a matter of attrition. They're slowly getting in there. We're starting to see those come in. We're getting those taken care of now, and we're slowly pushing that shortage behind us. And we're going to start seeing a lot more items that we announced, in some cases over 2 years ago, start coming into production and finally onto dealer shelves and onto your layout. Yeah, exactly. Good case in point. Truck parts are still affected by the chip shortage, unfortunately. Let's see, any other questions? Let's do two more questions because we've gone on for almost 2 hours now. And I know you guys have got stuff to do on your workbench, so I don't want to take you away from that. Let's do one or two more questions and then I'm going to let you guys go. Let's see what we got here. We still got about 111 folks joining us live, so that's good. Any chance for an Athearn E unit? I can tell you right now, it's not on the radar. Not on the radar. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it, but right now we've got some other things in the production queue. A lot of stuff I wish I could tell you about right now, but I can't. That hopefully will blow your minds. But nothing like that. That doesn't mean we won't do it in the future, but not in the immediate future. Let's see. Tom, I was waiting for this question. You know what, Tom? You're not alone. Trust me, if you were to ask Janik, I ask him about this all the time. How are the Rock Island Blue Jeeps coming along? I honestly can't answer that because I think Janik's finally locked his door and sees me calling him on Teams and just says, it's Jim asking about Rock Island again. I'm not going to answer it. I do know that we've got some GP7s coming up in the not too distant future. I'm pulling for you, Tom. We need some blue and white Rock Island Jeeps. I can't really honestly answer that question. I'll try to corner Janik and see if I can get him to come on here and see if he can give us an answer. All right. Michael, excellent question, and I wish I could do this with a snap of my fingers. He's asking, can you please put month, year ETAs on pre-orders and items that are in process? So if you look at our printed literature, we do that. However, our website does not do that currently. Now, it wasn't always that way. One of the things I really wanted on the new website was I wanted a shipping schedule. I wanted you guys to be able to go to the website and say, hey, when are my GP9s going to be in my grubby little hands? And you could go to our website and find that information out. Unfortunately, this past July, Horizon Hobby did a software mitigation. Now, that software mitigation is going to make things better for us in the long run, even though right now we're going through some challenges. And one of those challenges is it kind of disrupted our website. And if you've been to our website recently, you know what I'm talking about. We lost the ETAs, we lost the production schedule, we lost a lot of things that you guys are looking for. So do know that our web and development team is working on a solution for that. They told me that they're going to try to have that all up and running again by November. So we will definitely do that, Michael, and everybody else is asking about it. In the meantime, Michael and everyone else, keep an eye on our social media. You can definitely ask questions on there. I try to answer as many of those questions as possible. We also have other guys that maintain that as well. So you can ask away until we get that on our website. We don't mind at all. We're going to end the show with one last question coming from Andrew. Andrew wants to know one last question, if possible. But are there any plans to use Bluenami decoders in place of Tsunami decoders from the factory? So here's the answer to that. In the short term, no, we're not going to do that. There's a couple of design things that we have to consider. For one thing, the Bluenami technology, as great as it is slightly bigger than your standard Tsunami. That is going to mean in certain situations, say like the GP9 on your screen here, it's going to require us to do some updates to the chassis to allow us to add that new technology to the locomotive. That is something that we just haven't gotten to yet. Will we do it in the future? It's definitely a possibility, but for right now, we're going to stick with the Econami and the Tsunami 2 decoders. But excellent question. And with that, I want to let you guys get to it. It's the gateway to the weekend. Get out there, get some modeling done, be kind to others. Stay tuned for Train Tuesday. I do believe this coming Train Tuesday is recorded. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see Train Tuesday live or if you prefer it just already recorded and thrown into your feed. Until next time, everyone, be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling, and above all, high greens. Take care, everyone.